Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have a Christmas card to share with you using some My Favorite Things products. First of all, I am featuring the Jingle Hugs from My Favorite Things, which is this adorable stamp set that has been released like last year. And actually I truly adore these diddly inks stamps that are released by My Favorite Things. I created one card with it last year, so if you haven't seen it, well, it's a bit down on my YouTube channel or in the video list that I created, or a playlist with Christmas cards. But there I actually colored this image using some greens, and so to not repeat myself, today I'm going to use some reds for the dress of this girl. Another thing that I have been wanting to do on some of my Christmas cards is to add a bit of like this plushy white ball. I don't know how it's called, but I just love it, and I have seen it in the past years being done by a lot of people, so I cannot give specific credits, but I love the idea. And I thought that with this bell on the head of the little girl here, I could add that instead of coloring that bell, so that I will do later on. But first, the coloring. So I stamped this image out on Transotype Perfect Coloring paper, which is my favorite paper to do Copic coloring on. And it was a whole process to get to this paper, because I initially started with Nina Solar White, which I still adore. But from time to time, when I had to add multiple layers, I experienced some bleeding from my markers going outside of the lines just because that paper was oversaturated. Now that was one problem. Another problem was that at a certain point it was really hard to get my hands on it in Europe. Now several shops normally carry it. It has been a while since I checked it, but as far as I know, there were some suppliers, but from time to time they ran out as well from this paper. So I was struggling, and I was afraid that I wouldn't have any paper to color on. And so I asked around and I came upon Transotype Perfect Coloring paper. I also tried another kind of paper, and I don't recall it anymore how it was named, but that I didn't like, so it was a bit of trial and error. And then I tried this one, recommended by some people on Instagram, and so I tried it, budget friendly I think, and it really handles Copic markers amazingly. So I can add several layers. Most of the time I need two to get that blend that I really like. If I need more, I can add more, and that's the most important thing about this paper and the thing I love about it. Also, the color is really vibrant on this paper, which I didn't have on the other paper that I cannot recall, but that was a bummer for me on the other paper, and that's why I didn't want to color on it. On this paper, I personally find it really vibrant, and that's a bonus for me. Okay, so for the coloring, as you saw, I tried to use sort of the same colors all over. You know me by now. If I can, I repeat the same markers. Sometimes I add another marker to that combination to change it up. Sometimes I leave one out if I need to. It's a really handy way to really stretch the markers that you have and not have to buy all of them at once, because that's really expensive. And I cannot say it enough, because in the beginning I was a bit like buying markers really randomly, and then for me what worked was to purchase the hex chart from Sandy Elnock, which I can completely recommend. Why? Because for me personally, and I know there is a logic in the numbers of Copic markers and how they are called and such, but for me it was really hard to see which one was going to work with the other one. Now with the hex chart, actually Sandy Elnock did the work for you. You have several colors surrounded by colors at work, and that once I had bought the hex chart, I could really specifically add markers to my collection. And I still don't have all of them, but I really am in love with several brown combinations, for example here that I'm using, And it's all because of that chart that I could see what I could buy on top of the ones that I already had to really stretch it and not have to buy a complete combination, completely new, because I didn't own a marker of that combination yet. So now I'm just adding markers on the go. From time to time I add one, two. I don't have to add a lot more to have new combinations thanks to a good chart. If you have another chart that works for you, perfect. But if you're still looking and want to, well, be able to think things through when buying new markers, I can definitely recommend that. In case you're curious about the combinations that I'm using today later on, or just after this video or while I'm coloring here, there is always my blog post where I'm listing all of the combinations so that you can easily find everything there. Okay, so here I'm just continuing with that red that I used for the band, the necklace sort of thingy on the reindeer. And I'm just making sure that in this coloring, I don't know if it is obvious or not, but I'm trying to have that light source sort of centered. So the girl is on the left, I'm adding shadows on the left side of her. The reindeer is on the right, so I'm adding shadows on the right side of the reindeer. And I personally love coloring darkest to lightest marker and going back in if needed for my transition, the blend that I want. But if you color another way, that's perfectly fine. You do you, that's the most important thing, having fun, loving the end result, and just enjoying the ride, you know? But for me, this works the best, going from darkest to lightest. So I'm building this image up and I'm almost done with the coloring. I'm just going to add those yellow details. But I'm not going to add anything to the bell on the head of the girl. As I said in the beginning, I will later on add that plushy white ball on top. So I don't need it to be yellow. I also didn't want the image to peek through when I added it, and I didn't know whether that ball was going to cover it completely. So I used my white Jelly Roll pen to sort of cover up those black lines. In the end, I think it wasn't necessary, but I didn't know how that was going to turn out, so to be sure, I just did it. And now onto my background. I made sure to trim a panel down while I actually die cut it using the basic rectangles from my elephant. It's, well, the basic rectangles that I have. It's perfectly A2 sized and it gives me that lovely stitching details that I really, really adore. I also love keeping it white. So therefore I most of the time use purple tape as I'm doing here. I just mask it off. That also keeps that panel in place, and then I will play around with my stencil. Today I'm using Peace, Love and Joy. This is a stencil from my favorite things, and I think I used it once already last year. There I used it with a snowman that I recall, and I used reds. Today I'm again using some warm colors, but if you want to, you can completely change this card by using some blues, and I think if I would use some blues here on the background, I would also splatter it with white gouache because the blue can also indicate some sort of a sky. You don't need to, but you can. So I'm ink blending some distress inks here, a red one and then an orangey one. This card is going to be really, really bright. Okay, so I started with my stencil, and for some reason I always hope that the stencil will be just enough, you know. But for another reason, most of the time when I have a stencil like this, I sort of find it really harsh having all that white underneath. So what I did was just softly ink blend the leftover ink that I still had on the brush. Sometimes I needed to add a bit more, but I just made sure to go over with the same color over the letters that I just ink blended with the stencil, and then made it fade out into that white. So really, really simple. And I'm just going to leave the rest white. I'm not going to add anything. You can definitely blend further. You can also add more of that stenciled area. But I just wanted to corner This image sort of is in a triangular kind of positioning, and this way I just balance it out on my card base, in my opinion. So that was what I was going for. But there are multiple options, of course. To adhere the image, I am using some thin foam squares. These are from Scrapbook Adhesives, my favorites. They are really easy to add and really easy to get that backing off, so that's why I love using it. I'm going to add it to this card, and then this card is almost finished. So before I'm finishing this card, maybe a quick update. I have been living for the past week in between boxes because it's finally that time. I am moving. Well, the move will be the 6th of August, but I am currently painting the house. I got the keys a bit earlier than expected, and I'm really excited, but there is a lot to paint, so I'm going to give every wall a bit of white, and then later on we will add some accents here and there wherever we find it necessary. But currently, yeah, I'm living at my parents' and the parents-in-law, just to have an easy commute to the new house, and there I'm just painting everything, making it ready to then move and install everything again and create new content. But no worries, I still have a lot to share with you, and I'm hoping to do that soon in between all of the painting here at home. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and of course that you like the end result. I wish you all an incredible day, and I'll be back soon with some new crafty inspiration. Bye!